What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. We're gonna be reacting to 25 Marvel movie scenes too heartbreaking for words. Oh Lord! If they show all the scenes that I cried on, I'm gonna be a total wreck right now. Just letting you know that right now I cannot speak right now. But we're gonna be reacting to 25 Marvel movie scenes too heartbreaking for words. So. Y'all have y'all tissues ready, have them near you, because if you're a Marvel fan like me, I advise to have tissues near you. So I'll leave the full video in the link in the description down below, so you guys can watch the full video without me reacting to it. So have your tissues near you, and let's get started.
I don't want to go, sir, please.
We're not gonna lie, Avengers Endgame was tough on us emotionally, and it got us thinking about all the times the Marvel Cinematic Universe has dragged us through the emotional ringer. We're talking death scenes, surprise betrayals, tragic backstories, and even some tender moments that caught us off guard. We're gonna be progressing through the universe in order of release date, starting with Iron Man and wrapping up with some big moments from Endgame. But on the subject of catching us off guard, we have to issue a blanket spoiler for every movie in the MCU. So if you haven't seen a certain film and you see something you didn't want to, don't say we didn't want.
Y'all, he said it on the screen. This is like, how long ago? Endgame came out like 5 months ago, 6 months ago. If y'all haven't seen it by now, don't watch this video because it's about to be a whole bunch of spoilers in here. So, just saying. If you haven't got around to watching it, do not watch this video.
With that said, let's jump in.
Assemble.
Starting us off is the death that started it all, that of Ho Yinsen, the captive doctor that Tony meets in the cave at the start of the first Iron Man. The moment is built up to beautifully. As Yinsen stitches Tony up and helps him build the first Iron Man suit, he tells Tony about wanting to get back to his family. Later, as the terrorists close in on Tony and Yinsen charges with a machine gun, giving Tony time to finish suiting up. When Tony finds the injured Yinsen, he tells him he has to survive in order to see his family. Yinsen replies,
"I'm going to see them last time."
Like Tony, we'll never forget this moment, or the bravery of Yinsen's sacrifice.
Yeah.
Skipping ahead a couple of movies, we have a very similar death scene of another formative mentor of a classic Marvel hero. We're of course referring to Dr. Erskine, the German scientist who created the super soldier serum and ensured that Steve Rogers received it. Erskine pushed back against the army to make sure the pure-hearted Steve Rogers became Captain America. Through his scenes with Steve, we see that Erskine is deeply concerned with the responsibility of what he's created, and that he's not looking for a perfect soldier, but for a good man. Erskine uses his final moments to point to Steve's heart, an emotional moment that reminds him why he was chosen to be Captain America. Captain America as a character can arguably be defined by two moments, both of them in the first Avenger.
True.
One is his refusal to give up his fight with the bully in the alley. Second is his choice to crash a plane full of bombs into the Arctic Ocean, freezing him for 70 years. Everything in this scene is perfect, from the score to the editing to the dialogue. But it wouldn't work, and the entire movie wouldn't work if not for the chemistry between the main two actors. The final moments of Endgame would not hit so hard if this scene hadn't completely knocked it out of the park. The first act of the Avengers does a very smart thing. It establishes Agent Coulson as a comic book fan. And though we should have suspected something was up when Joss Whedon made us care about someone, we were still completely shocked when he ripped our hearts out. Coulson believed in real heroes, even if they were old-fashioned or corny, and his sincere belief converted even the most cynical moviegoers. His status as a regular guy underscored his bravery in facing down Loki, and his sudden demise gave this fun summer blockbuster some weight. Coulson's death pulled the Avengers together, and Robert Downey Jr.'s delivery of "his name was Phil" is one of the most satisfying lines in the entire series. Continuing on our journey towards Endgame, we want to touch on a quiet, understated moment from Iron Man 3. In case it's been a while, the plot of Iron Man 3 involves a group of suicide bombers who turn out to be injected with a virus called Extremis, which causes them to combust involuntarily. Tony also discovers that the bombers are being targeted because they are veterans. When Tony tells this to the mother of one of them, you see how much it means to her that her son was not a killer. All of this leads to Iron Man 3's most profound comment. Society doesn't care that veterans are self-destructing because they're expected to do that anyway. It's a brief scene, but a powerful one nonetheless. Frigga, Thor's mother, as you may recall, is murdered by a dark elf near the middle of Thor the Dark World. It's a fine scene, but to be honest, it didn't really get our tear ducts going when we first saw the movie. What did get us, however, was Frigga's cameo in Avengers Endgame. Frigga's unwavering belief in Thor as a leader, plus the dignified and knowing way in which she faces her own death, was legitimately moving. Even at his lowest place mental health-wise, Frigga still knew her son was a hero, and the courageous way she accepts her fate shows exactly where he got that from. The line that defines the friendship or other kind of relationship
This is my
of
favorite movie.
Steve and Bucky is revealed through many emotional
Besides
scenes in Captain
Endgame.
America: The Winter Soldier. But the
Because
final
I'm with
fight
you
was
to
a
the end
gut
of the-
punch none of us saw coming. At the end of the film, Captain America is faced with having to fight his childhood
That
best friend
scene was
Bucky,
so
now
freaking
brainwashed
powerful,
as a
man.
Hydra assassin. So does Steve hit Bucky in the head really hard to snap him out of it, Black Widow style? No, he doesn't. Instead, he does something few action heroes ever do. He refuses to fight. As Bucky proceeds to beat him half to death, Cap says a line Bucky hasn't heard in 70 years.
Because
So
I'm
with
with
you
you.
to the end of the line.
And with that, our hearts melted, and 1,000 internet fan fictions were born. The opening of the first Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the darkest things in the entire MCU, which is funny because most people think of the musical credit sequence as the beginning of the film.
Right.
But the movie actually starts with a devastating prologue that finds a young Peter Quill at his mother's deathbed. She offers him a gift, and in her last breath extends her hand toward him. But Peter's young and too afraid to take it, and as Meredith dies, this traumatic loss destroys Peter's capacity for human connection for almost 30 years. It's a brutal scene, made all the more unpleasant by the revelation that Peter's father
You can't truly know who you are
Ads.
until you know what you are.
You betrayed.
their ego intentionally gave Meredith cancer. Moving on to Age of Ultron, we have a sequence that is not only tragic itself, but foreshadows several tragedies to come. This is, of course, the nightmare sequence orchestrated by Scarlet Witch, as she gives us horrific visions of each Avenger's worst fears. Tony sees a world he can't protect, leading him to create Ultron. Cap's alienation is exacerbated by a dream of Peggy Carter dancing without him. Thor sees the end of Asgard to come in Ragnarok, and even Heimdall's eventual death is hinted at. Widow sees back into her past, into a traumatic memory that further drives a wedge between herself and the Hulk. Hulk is pushed into a real-life rampage that breaks him psychologically for several years. This sequence really screwed with us, not to mention its effects on the Avengers.
Right.
At the end of Age of Ultron, the villain has been defeated, a small country has been saved, and the final quips have been made. Everything's wrapped up, or at least everything seems that way until Hulk, on a Quinjet he boarded to stop Ultron, refuses to come back. Turns out, Hulk hasn't fully recovered from his rampage in South Africa earlier in the film. If Age of Ultron is about the Avengers seeing themselves as monsters, Hulk's rampage made that image a certainty. The Hulk decides he is wrong for Natasha, and by extension, all of humanity. This depressive
That
state,
melted my
essentially
heart.
post-breakup, is where we find Hulk in Thor Ragnarok, and it cleverly echoes Thor's arc in Endgame.
Yes!
We've reached Captain America: Civil War in our tragic journey, a movie with its fair share of sad moments. One comes
I was
right
so
on the
mad
heels
at
of one of the
Cap
most
right
joyous
there.
events in the Marvel Universe, the airport battle. We're
Not
referring
at
to
the
Rhodey's
airport
fall,
battle.
the one which claimed
When-
the use of
when
his
they
legs.
showed on
This accident is
the
tragic in
little
three
video
ways.
of Tony
Not only is
Khan's
War Machine
getting
forced to
killed.
cope with a new
That
disability,
hurt.
but both Vision and Falcon feel personally responsible, driving them to despair. This despair allows Falcon to tell Tony where Captain America and Winter Soldier are going, all while Tony himself is still in a fragile headspace. All this tension leads us to another emotional moment. Specifically, One of the ugliest, most visceral fights in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The final battle of Civil War is one of the few where it's unclear who we're supposed to root for.
Right.
All we want as the audience is for the fighting to stop. If Civil War is a movie about how personal emotions can overwhelm rational political beliefs, the final fight turns the main dynamic on its head. Captain America, who spent the movie protecting Bucky to irrational lengths, now is in the moral right, while Iron Man fights an irrational fight for emotional reasons. One of the most singular and beautiful scenes in the entire MCU occurred in Doctor Strange. The death of the Ancient One is the emotional high point of the movie. It's a beautiful tableau which manages to speak a profound psychological truth about human beings. We've spent the entire film thinking that the Ancient One knows everything. But even as an all-wise ancient sorcerer, there are things that she does not understand. And like Doctor Strange himself, the Ancient One has to accept the things she doesn't understand. She has to greet her own death willingly. A gorgeous scene in one of the most unique movies in the MCU. It's kinda wild how much we here at Screen Rant care about Nebula, considering what a non-entity she was in the first Guardians of the Galaxy. All we knew at that point was that Nebula was Gamora's jilted sister, while the full reasons for why they hated each other were only hinted at. When what was going on was finally explained in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it was a lot darker than we expected. Turns out Nebula's dad, Thanos, was forcing Nebula and Gamora to do battle growing up. And when Nebula would inevitably lose, Thanos would replace part of her body with a mechanical part. As disturbing as the imagery is, the real-life parallel that abusive parents often pit siblings against each other emotionally resonated on a much deeper level. One of the quietest, most tender moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe's on-screen history is the funeral of Yondu Udonta. Peter's eulogy, where he finally accepts Yondu as his true father, is followed by a gorgeous montage as the Ravagers give him a proper memorial service. The funeral gives the audience time to reflect on the family they have, both biological and found, who've shaped them. And in a more subtle way, it follows Rocket Raccoon as he realizes that the Ravagers have forgiven a flawed person, and he can be forgiven too. In the final shot of the film, Rocket's forced to consider, maybe for the first time, that he does deserve love.
True.
Moving on to Black Panther, and a death that doesn't get much attention, T'Challa's advisor Zuri. With Zuri, there is actually a complex character arc going on, just in a subtle way. About halfway through the film, we find out that Zuri was an undercover agent for Wakanda, watching over the actions of T'Chaka's brother N'Jobu. Zuri reported N'Jobu to T'Chaka, which resulted in N'Jobu's death. Zuri, by remaining impartial and agreeing to keep the murder secret, allowed something to happen that he always regretted. So when another death is about to happen on his watch, he refuses to make the same mistake twice. In righting his biggest wrong, Zuri makes his own death, moments later, all the more tragic. But of course, we can't talk tragic Black Panther moments without talking about the tragic figure of Eric Killmonger. Killmonger, like many Marvel characters, apparently never got over the childhood death of his father and dedicated his life to spreading his pain across the world, racking up kills and keeping score on his own body. Killmonger trained all his life for revenge on Wakanda, his father's home as well as the home of the people who killed him. Beyond the world of the film, Killmonger's beliefs also echo the generational trauma of slave trade and the desire for violent resistance, made explicitly clear in his now famous final line.
Just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage.
An emotional death for one of the best characters in the MCU. We're on to Infinity War, and as you can maybe guess, we'll be here a while. Let's start with Peter and Gamora. As the Guardians head out to face Thanos, Gamora makes Peter promise to kill her if she gets captured. After a lot of reluctance, Peter agrees. He's only just gotten used to accepting the Guardians as a new family, and he's not ready to let go yet. Amazingly, when the moment comes, Quill pulls through, carrying out Gamora's wishes and trying to kill her. But it turns out that Thanos was in control the whole time, and takes her away. This wrecks Quill, leading him to screw up the Avengers' plan to stop Thanos and set the events of Endgame in motion. And if that moment weren't sad enough, it's followed soon enough by a journey to Vormir. where Red Skull leads Thanos to the Soul Stone. Once there, Thanos is tasked with sacrificing something he truly loves, and luckily, the only person he cares about is there with him. Though it's tough to care about Bad Dad Thanos or buy that he truly loves Gamora, it's undeniably hard to watch a character.
It was kind of sad to see Thanos with tears because, you know, he's sitting there trying to go get all these stones, and he doesn't realize that the Soul Stone, you have to give up a soul for a soul. So that was a touching moment, I think. Like just seeing tears just come down his face, and knowing how sad he is that he has to kill Gamora. Like, I was mad at him, but then I was sad with him at the same time. Because to see him have full tears coming down his eyes is just, it's kind of emotional. If you don't agree with me, then hey.
After we've grown to care about for so long be killed in order to help the person she hates the most. And even if 2014 Gamora is back, we still miss the one we spent Guardians Volume 2 with. The finger snap heard round the universe, and the spawn of 1,000 memes. The final scene of Infinity War may have lost some of its impact by now, but it's easy to forget what a gut punch it was at the time. Our confusion at Bucky's death, the tragedy of watching Baby Groot fade away, and of course the horror in Spider-Man's inability to process what's going on. But worst of all maybe was the sense that the Avengers were going to lose.
But then everybody started making
away at
memes
us from
of
the
it.
start of the movie. Even at the highest points of the Wakanda battle, there was a feeling that Thanos was unstoppable, an inevitability, and that hit us harder than anything else. I doubt you expected anything from Ant-Man and the Wasp to make this list, but here we are. Ant-Man is a pretty family-friendly franchise, but there is a very sad, dark idea happening in the background of its second film. Ghost, also known as Ava Starr, is thought to be the villain of the movie until it's revealed that she's dying and only trying to stop the chronic pain she's felt all her life. After an accident killed her parents and left her with strange, painful superhuman powers, Ghost is only trying to cure herself. With the help of Ant-Man and the Wasp, she starts her journey of healing, along with a new surrogate father in Bill Foster, a scientist who refuses to give up on her. We weren't kidding about that spoiler alert. Anyway, one of the most shocking moments in Endgame was when the Avengers managed to track down and kill Thanos in the first 20 minutes of the film. After literally disarming him, Thor beheads Thanos and walks away. Beyond even the fact that Thanos has destroyed the Infinity Stones and the snap is seemingly irreversible, we can tell what Thor has just done isn't enough. Killing Thanos doesn't heal him psychologically, it just pushes him further down a spiral of depression. And the fact that he's dead with no answers on how to move on causes the Avengers to do something they've never done: give up. Black Widow as a character has never fully valued herself. From the scenes in Avengers when she discusses the red in her ledger to her self-appraisal as a monster in Age of Ultron. In her mind, she's never fully redeemed herself for the bad things she's done. And as we find her at the beginning of Endgame, she's dedicated her entire existence to righting those wrongs. As Cap rightly points out, she has no life outside of trying to save the world. So to watch her validate that belief and fulfill what she sees as her destiny to try and fix everything is legitimately tragic. Natasha deserved better, even if she didn't think so. But of course, we have to talk about the other major death from Endgame, the end of Tony Stark. In a final heroic act, Tony sacrifices himself in order to kill Thanos and destroy his army. This is followed by an emotional funeral scene, which finds the heroes of the MCU united to mourn the loss of the one who started it all. Still, what really makes this moment work is how well Endgame builds up to it. Post-snap, at his lowest point, Tony managed to do the one thing he never was able to: move on. Tony moved past whatever responsibility he felt for failing to stop Thanos and become a loving family man. And he threw it all away, because the world needed saving. That's why he's an Avenger. Though this is a sweet moment and not a sad one, it would be impossible to deny that it made us emotional. After a lifetime of putting the well-being of others over himself, Steve Rogers finally does something selfish. He gets a life. specifically the one he was denied by his duties as Captain America. And for
his
those of
dance
you
with
confused about the
Peggy.
mechanics of this moment, really it's simple. Cap went back to the 70s, meaning there were 2 Captain Americas running around for 40 years, and he just never did anything big enough to change the time stream. Then, when he was 100 years old, he simply snuck onto the Avengers compound with a shield and sat on a bench for a while until Bucky noticed. It's as simple as that. Anyway, that's our list. Did we miss any major emotional moments? Did any of the moments listed here not work for ya? Did you cry when Ant-Man dropped his taco? Subscribe to Screen Rant for more Ant-Man and taco-related content. Well, maybe not as much taco-related content, but we could all use a good taco video every now and then. Man, I'm hungry.
Hold on, y'all. I want to react to something real quick. Let's react to fans. React to Spider-Man coming back to the MCU.
Overbooked.
Well, would you look at that? Despite the fact that Sony said the door was closed in regards to Spider-Man staying in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, news has come out that Spider-Man 3 will indeed be a part of the larger universe.
I'm not leaving.
His post was so freaking perfect
Which
yesterday.
is fantastic. And we here at Screen Rant apparently aren't the only ones who think so, since fans all over the net have taken to social media to rejoice and share their relief publicly. Let's take a look at some of these reactions, shall we?
Okay.
With the end of Spider-Man Far From Home leaving Spider-Man in such a
And
precarious
got
situation,
exposed.
fans were a bit disappointed when the news broke that Disney and Sony were having difficulty
I'm so
reaching
glad
a
he's
deal
back
to keep him
because
around within
this
the Marvel
man
Cinematic
legit
Universe.
got exposed.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
Ever since the entire ordeal kicked off in late August, it had been quite the roller coaster of emotions, with many fans starting to give up hope of ever seeing more of the webhead hanging out with their other favorite Marvel heroes. But news has broken that Sony and Disney have indeed reached a deal. While this agreed upon collaboration may only be temporary, just like the original deal, we do know that we are getting at least one more solo Spider-Man film. And they even went so far as to announce when Spider-Man 3 will debut
Sure
in
did.
theaters, which is both crazy
July
and
16th.
exciting. July 16th, 2021 just can't come
Yep.
soon enough. Apparently, we are also going to be getting Spidey in another Marvel film as well,
Mm-hmm.
one that doesn't bear his name. No word yet on which one, but just hearing that is good enough for us. And all
Right.
this news has kicked the internet's GIF game into overdrive, and there were some amazing ones. At Jay Racino showed their excitement over the news via a classic celebratory GIF, using a clip from one of the Despicable Me movies to proclaim just how happy they were to see Spider-Man back. At Trunks WD hit us with a bit of added nostalgia by using a GIF from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, something
Yeah.
that we actually saw quite a bit of on Twitter, such as this tweet by @MCU Marvels that simply said, quote, "I now need a MJ and Spider-Man upside down kiss in the
Same.
next movie." Know what else we saw
Same.
on Twitter? Clips of people dancing being used to illustrate fans' enthusiasm, such as one featuring Chef Goofy cutting
Whoa.
that was posted by
Hey.
Twitter user @Davies
What?
At MCU Harrier hit us with another clip of dancing, this time to the homecoming version of the classic Spider-Man theme. Shifting from dancing into something slightly more adorable is this tweet from Jeffrey March BR1, who shared a picture of a baby dressed up in a Spider-Man shirt with the caption, "This was our Into the Spider-Verse look this morning, before the news. I like to think we had something to do with it. With how freaking cute that kid looks, we could believe it." At the Daniels HDS kept the adorable coming, this time in the form of some chibi fan art of the Wallcrawler, running and celebrating with an angelic Tony Stark, letting the world all know how he feels with a simple, "I'm back, baby." And of course, the
Back,
references to the
baby.
MCU started rolling in shortly after the deal was announced. By far the most common shot to be used was the shot from Avengers Endgame when Spider-Man was first reunited with Tony Stark following his unblipping.
I used that one on my
People
Twitter
like
yesterday.
@Sebasaga, @Azrianto Tega, and @Sydney N. Swimmer. Of course, we would be remiss without touching upon a few of the actual members of the cast and how they took the news. Zendaya, who of course plays Peter Parker's love interest, MJ in the MCU.
Bruh, if
didn't
y'all have not
much to
seen
say,
Tom Holland's
but more
post
than got the
yesterday.
point across when she tweeted out
Perfect.
this GIF, which is
Perfect.
probably one of, if not the most famous and well-known GIFs of all time. A true classic that goes a long way towards sharing her happiness.
I'm not obsessed with him, I'm just very observant.
Outside of social media, in real life, Screen Rant got a chance to ask Jacob Batalon, who plays Peter's best buddy and his quote-unquote guy in the chair, how he was feeling about the news, to which he responded that although they were ready to do a third film with just Sony, he was overall glad. Quote, "I'm really happy. I think we were all really set and ready to go with Sony. We were ready to move on and do the third one with just them, but we're more than happy to work with Marvel again." And then there is Spider-Man himself, Tom Holland, who had probably the best reaction out of everybody, who simply posted a clip from the movie The Wolf of Wall Street on his Instagram. We also enjoyed that he captioned the clip simply with a smirking emoji. Classic Tom. Seems like everyone is definitely relieved to hear that Tom Holland will continue to portray the character as part of the MCU. What was your reaction when you heard the news? Let us know down in the comments below.
Yo, I was feeling hyped yesterday, and it was a Friday yesterday. I had just got back home from school, and I was like, this is my routine when I come back from school. I come in the house, I pull up to the driveway, I come get out of the car, take out my backpack, lock the car, go in the house, come upstairs, take off my book bag, put on some comfy clothes, brush my teeth, eat, and then come upstairs and just record video. And so before I was about to record a video, because I scroll on Twitter before I start recording any videos. I scroll on Twitter to see what was going on. Because every day since the day the news had announced that he was leaving, I was scrolling Twitter every day to make sure that anything was happening. So I'm going on Twitter, and it was just a whole bunch of feeds saying that Spidey's back in the MCU. Then I go over to Instagram, and I look on Tom Holland's Instagram post. And he had the perfect reaction. Perfect. I never watched Wolf of Wall Street. I'll probably watch it soon. I don't know how I can watch it. I'll probably watch it on like a bootleg website. But because I've been wanting to watch it. It was on Netflix at one point, but I never got around to watching it. But then it is so perfect. Perfect. He was like, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. Yeah. It was just perfect. Yesterday was just the freaking best day ever. Like, we were getting a lot of superhero news, a lot of Superman news, a lot of Crisis on Infinite Earths, a lot of stuff yesterday. Yesterday was a great day to be a superhero fan, If you're not a superhero fan, like you're missing out. You're missing out on the fun. It's like as soon as you hear like new news or good news about superhero stuff, you just get all excited and you just hyped a lot. Like, it's fun. It's fun to have that feeling. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give a like, comment, share, and subscribe, and turn on those post notifications so you know when I upload. Also put down in the comments what you want me to react to next, and I will surely do them. But I'll see you guys in the next video. Holla at you. Deuces.